Okay, so yeah, we did leave off with string parsing, and we'll just keep going. We got like 8 functions to write or something. So the next one is export const string to data type. Function, input data, input metadata. And you're going to see a lot, these functions that we're going to be writing now, a lot of them are in support of the processing of the data that we've already loaded at the end of training 1, if you remember.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because we still needed to process that data. And so these functions are going to automate, or allow us to automate the process of processing that data so that it can actually be usable. So the header, this header is a bit much because it has examples built into it. So I'll copy paste that to you, but let me just write it up here. Function string to data type. Description converts a string to the appropriate data value. And then we get, so if it's a string value of, I'm going to put a string. This is a string, 3.1, my keyboard, 3.141592638846238384627950284197.
Did you memorize that?
Yeah. Then it will be converted to a float of the same value. Yeah, I have it completely memorized. Like, you can see my camera, eyes closed, 3.1415926535897932338462643383827950284197. Done.
That's impressive.
It's one of those things I try to improve on, every year when Pi Day comes around, March 14th. It's not nearly as much. I mean, when I was in college, there was guys that did a competition. There was a competition to win $314. So that was actually second prize. First prize was $3,141.
Wow.
And 59 cents. So it was the full digits. You had to memorize as many digits, and you had judges that would judge how many digits did you recite from memory. I didn't do that because I wasn't this far along at that point. But the guys that would get first or second place would be around the range of, 3,000 to 5,000 or 8,000 digits.
Jeez.
Yeah. If it's a string value of false, then it will get converted to a Boolean of the same value. Okay, if it's a string value of 12, then it will get converted to an integer of the same value. If it's a string value of happy birthday, it will get returned the same as the input, no change, since it's just a string. Okay, if it's an array of strings or a collection object, it will get returned as the same as the input, no change. Okay, let me copy that for you. Oops, let me close this over here on the left so you can see a little bit better. And then I'm going to clean up this header, which is going to take a string for input, and takes a string for the input metadata, and this returns an object, or a string, or Boolean, integer, or float, a string that should be converted to some value. And this one is the input metadata, not used for this business rule. And then this one is returns a value of whatever type the string should be converted to as appropriate. And at author, at date 2022/01/27. Okay. And then the implementation, I think we don't have much here. What we can do, we can use this part right here. You can see I've selected if input data and the curly brace all the way up to let function name. Copy that and paste that down here. And I'll press enter and do another curly brace to close that if, and then I'm going to mark it and if input data, just so I've got it marked. And then the rest of it is this stuff down here, which I can just copy paste from there. So that gives me my boilerplate code. Now that that's in there, oops, this has to change. That should be the first thing. So then we say let data type equals determine object data type, which is another function we're going to have to implement. We're going to pass it the input data and empty string because there is no second for that. And then we say switch. And I'm not sure if I've introduced you to the switch statement. Have I talked about that before?
No.
Okay, so before I get into that too much, type checking is a thing in JavaScript. It's one of the bigger things you have to deal with. Let me just I'll just write something. You don't need to write this, so just turn your copying off for a second. If I say if input data equals your birthday, okay, and I can have some code, and I can say else if input data equals double E or triple equals my birthday, and I have some more code, and then I can say else if data equals Hannah's birthday. Oops. Hannah's birthday, right? And then I could come in here and say else if input data equals Bill's birthday, right? And on and on and on. I can have a whole bunch of these. But this code it's cumbersome, right? It's not very pleasant to read through, and it doesn't execute very properly either because it checks this one and checks that one and checks this one and checks that one. It doesn't just go straight to the one that it should execute right away. Well, that's another thing. But anyways, yeah. So there is a cleaner way, and it's called the switch statement. So we just write switch and data type. So whatever data type is what I'm switching on. And I've got a curly brace there, and I can mark the end of it. And switch data type, so I know when I'm closing it. And then we just write case boolean, and it has to have a colon. Now the trick here is after you have a case, you have to break, because if you don't, it's going to fall through to the next one. Execution will just fall through. So if it hits boolean, and then I do another case down here, and I say integer, and I put my break. So if I remove this break, now boolean and integer, if it is boolean, it'll execute whatever's in boolean first, and then it's going to fall through and execute whatever's in integer, and then it'll break. Right? Be what you want. After boolean, you probably want to break. Now there are cases where you do want it to fall through. Like maybe I'm doing two of these. Maybe I'm doing case lowercase boolean, right? And then that's both of them, and I want it to fall through. Like I want it to do both of those, and it'll do the same one together. But I would still want to have a break here because I don't want it to fall through to the integer. There are cases where I do have double cases like this, and then I have a break, and then double cases and a break. But it's usually like string or another data type of the same thing. Anyways, this is the syntax to do. Okay, so case boolean, return data. So now this is the part where you have to start copying again. So because now I've explained the switch. That's how it works. It's a little bit cleaner. Yeah. Okay. So return data equals string to boolean, and we'll pass input data empty string. That's another function we're going to write. Integer is return data equals parse int input data empty string case. And also what matters is how these functions are implemented. Order matters. In this specific instance, order matters. Float return data equals parse float input data. So we can't just write them in any order because there's a specific thought process as to how this is ordered. And then case string. You'll notice that I'm doing uppercase B, uppercase F, uppercase S. Those also matter because when we implement that in our determine object data type, it's going to return the uppercase for each of those. It's going to return just like that. Okay, case string, return data equals input data, break. And then we always have a default. And it doesn't say case, it just says default. At the end, default colon, and I'm putting a note here, we don't know what kind of object this is. Better just return it the way it is. Okay, so for this one, we just say return data equals input data, same as the string, and break. Even the default, you have a break. Although, technically that wouldn't matter anymore, but it's good syntax anyways. And it's good practice too. I think that that's it for this function. Yeah, it is. Start the next function, which is the first one, string to boolean. So export const string to boolean equals function input data, input metadata. Okay, that function. Oh, this one has a long note in it, but it's an important note. And it also describes why things are the way they are and how the order. Because there's this, remember I told you there's a specific order as to why things are implemented, and that's described here in this header. So string to boolean, that description converts a string to a boolean value. You'll see a little bit more about how this is implemented. Okay, it takes a string and returns a boolean. Okay, a string that contains a truthy or false-y value and should be converted to a boolean input metadata is not used for this business rule, and a boolean value of either true or false according to the business rule conversion. And author at date 2022-01-27, and then there's this note at note, and I'll copy paste this for you. We cannot pass in a 1 or 0 to this function and expect it to evaluate as a true or false, because, so this starts to get a little bit to why. We have another function that is passing strings into the function And also part of that check to look for data types is a check, do a new line right here on that comma, is a check to see if a string is a number. If we cause this function to evaluate a 0 or 1 to a Boolean, then the integer function would never get a chance to evaluate. See what that would do? It would short circuit the evaluation of the integer because Boolean is first. So
Okay.
that's why this note is important. We don't want to short circuit any of our logic with other stuff. Well, let's do the boilerplate first, at least,
Okay.
which is just copying this part right here. Same as we always do, from the if all the way to let, including the if and the box. So we always get the boilerplate code. And then the last 3 lines from here. I'm going to get the last 4 lines. Make sure to get your name. I'm going to make that space just so I don't forget. And string to Boolean. Oops, I think I got this name wrong. String Boolean and string to Boolean right here. Make sure we get that. And that should do it. Yeah, that gets us going. It's a very short function. There's only a few lines here, but we can definitely do that tomorrow. Return data. This should be false. So we set this to false first. Just make sure you set that to false right there.
Okay.
Other than that, we can call it quits for today.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again for